Hello and welcome back to another video. So today's video is going to be a little different than the ones in the past. I'm going to talk about just one specific point that I have a problem with. The sale of the Kingdom Halls that nobody really has talked about. And I really want to bring this out. So to start this video, we got to go back about 30 years ago in my lifetime. So as you can tell from behind you, that when I get involved in something, I get involved in it. So in the 80s, I was really into baseball card collecting, for about 3 or 4 years. And around 1991 or 1990, I got into comic books. I always liked superheroes before that, but I really got into it. Like all my money went into comic book collecting. I had my first part-time job, so I was buying a lot of comic books. Spider-Man was my favorite comic at that time, and I still like Spider-Man a lot today. So I was buying all of them, and I really enjoyed it. And at that time, the comic book industry had blown up. And they had multiple books about multiple, characters, and the books were all tied in. So if you wanted to get the whole story, you had to buy all the Spider-Man books, the one-shots, to get the whole story. And then Superman was doing the exact same thing at the time. So about 4 or 5 years later, in '98, there was an issue of Spider-Man 2099 about the scientists got some kind of device to raise the dead, reanimate corpses. And I read that, I'm like, it's a little strange, but okay, what it is. So for my graduation in 1995, my parents paid for my ticket to England for vacation. I had to pay for my spending money in my hotels. So my uncle and one of my best friends at the time, we went to England for 2 weeks. And then in May '95, we come back and my dad picks us up at JFK Airport, and I can tell something's not right. He's upset, he's short, he won't talk to me, he's angry the entire 3.5 hour drive. I get home, my mom's there. All my comic books were on the table, the dining room table. Like we're talking like 300 to 500. I don't know exactly how many I had, but I had 2 big boxes, full of comics, long boxes, and other ones. My mom says to me, even though my dad was an elder for like over 20 years at this point, my mom was the one who ran the household. So she says to me, Martin, I had a bad feeling. Something was wrong. I could tell something was in the house that wasn't right. So I went through your stuff. And I found this comic, and she held up this Spider-Man 2099. If I can find a picture of it, I'll put it in the beginning of the video. And she goes, I knew Satan was in her house, and look at this, is demonized. And I'm like, huh, okay, I'm sorry, Mom. I'll throw it away. She goes, no, all your comics are now demon-possessed. You got to destroy all of them. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Let me sell them. They're worth like at least $1,000. And when you're 18, $1,000 a lot of money. And she's like, no, you can't. You got to destroy them. You got to burn them. And she read me a scripture of the Bereans, I think it's the Bereans, who when they became Christians, they burned all their magic books. They were how many hundreds of pieces of silver, I forget. It doesn't matter. So she goes, you can't sell them because somebody else will become demonized by these books. I wish I could go back in time and talk to her. I said, so how does it work again? Is the pressman who prints it? Is the artist? Is it the writer? Just handling the books? Do you get demon possessed? Is it actually reading it? How does it work? Can the demons be dead in the books? But whatever. There's no point of arguing with her. Now, again, my mom is not unique. There's a lot of JW parents out there who have mental imbalances, and it can't be them that's wrong. It has to be some kind of influence. It can't be Satan. It can't be something in the house, because they can't address the fact that they had issues. They have to project them to other people that it's not her fault. So constantly my parents would go through our room looking for pornography, drugs, contraband. This was not a unique case. So this happened, I was 18. My parents took all the comics. We went outside, we burned them all. It was traumatic, but what are you going to do? Now, I understood her a little bit because I was a true believer, and it happened. So that was the spring of '95. A few years later, a ministerial servant, and my wife and I are married, and I moved to another congregation. But I have to back up. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm talking too fast. Before that, my dad made me talk to the other elders about this, because demon possession, all this craziness. And the presiding overseer at the time, nice guy named Wally Kewen, I think he was gay because he was never happy, him and his wife. But whatever, I'm digressing. I'm getting off on tangents. And he's, Martin, you gotta be careful with that demon possession. Once you get in, you can't get out. It's really dangerous. I'm like, okay, Wally, all right, I'm sorry. So because of that, they punished me I was going to start regular Pioneer in June of 95 when I finished school. They made me wait till September of 1995, 3-month delay, which is weird. I was never appointed to ministerial serve in 18, 19, or 20 in that old congregation because of reading comic books, I guess. It is what it is. So, a couple years later, I moved to Ephrata. I'm a ministerial servant now. I'm married. And you know how people out in service like to waste time? So, the one pioneer goes, hey, let's show you the old Kingdom Hall. I'm like, what? The old Kingdom Hall? Okay. Because we were sharing with Honeybrook congregation. He goes, yeah, let's show you the old Kingdom Hall. So he drives me over there. It's a church now, Pentecostal church. I'm like, oh, that's a little weird. It's a little strange, but okay, whatever. So then a few months later, the fall of 97, the Honeybrook sells their hall to a church too. And I'm like, it's a little strange. Okay, whatever. So we in spring of 98, so it's like 3 years after my comics were destroyed, we built a new hall. Great. Sold both halls, built a new hall. Quick build. I've talked about that quick build before. So that's it. That happened. So now we're going to flash forward to, a few years ago. I think it was like 2019. Growing up in Tremont. Tremont's like in the center of the state in the mountains. I was there for 10 years, 87 to 97. I had a younger friend. He was never baptized. I'm not going to say his name. His older brother is the secretary of my parents' hall now. His older sister, or actually his younger sister, she's a pioneer. He never got baptized, so he could still talk to his parents and his grandparents. He's the one that told me, hey, your dad's in the hospital. Oh, so I try to get in contact with him. I can't. He told me that my brother-in-law, who was at Wallkill and Brooklyn for 25 plus years, got kicked out of Bethel for being a woman, and he got this fellowship from the Apostle Congregation. So he's like, hey, Martin, they sold Tremont. I'm like, the hall. I'm like, what? Really? Okay, that's interesting. This is like 2 years ago. But I kind of, forgot about it. There was a nursing home right across the street from it. It was one of the largest in Schuylkill County. And I know even back in the 80s and 90s, they wanted to buy our land. So I assumed the nursing home bought it. Okay. So coming now to August 2021, at the beginning of this month, we go up to Scranton to visit my wife's non-JW family in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And if you don't know the geography of Pennsylvania, you don't really have to, but Scranton's northeastern PA, Tremont's kind of the center of the state, and I live in southern Pennsylvania along the Maryland border. So we're coming home Sunday. We have a nice weekend with her Worley family. Well, actually, I'm Worley too now. And my wife said, hey, let's stop at Palmero's in Montesville, get supper, because we used to live there. My wife used to go to Pottsville, I used to go to Tremont, and this restaurant was in between both congregations, and it was one of the best Italian restaurants in the area. So we stopped. The kids had a great time. Actually, they're not kids anymore. My kids are adults. So the adults, my adults had a nice supper. So the best way to get back on the highway is to go through Tremont. And I said, hey guys, you want to see the old house? So we took them into Tremont. Hey, I lived there for 8 years, and I said, do you remember the Donaldson house? And they're like, no. Let's go to Donaldson and see the house I lived in for a year before it burned down. So on the way, we passed the Kingdom Hall. It's a Grace Fellowship Church. And I'm like, boom. What? They sold it? It's a church now? Grace Fellowship Church? That really made me angry. Now, why? Now, why does this make me angry? Because the fact that Watchtower micromanaged everything that we did. We had so many talks, so many articles about what we could do and could not do. For instance, if you own a roofing company, you are not allowed to put a roof on a church. You could not actually build a church. You were not allowed, as a contractor, to build a church. You couldn't take that job because you're helping Satan the devil. You're helping Babylon the Great. You could not work for a church. You couldn't be a janitor. You couldn't be a secretary. We had clear articles. Why is that? Because if you're a true believer, a true Jehovah's Witness, every church, every religion is controlled by Satan the devil. So therefore, by working for any church, you're helping spread false worship. You're helping to facilitate the spread of Satan-controlled propaganda. So therefore, you could not work for a church or take money. But there was little weird things you could do. Like you were allowed to deliver mail to the church. If you worked for the power company and the power went out, you could restore power to them. So why was that okay, but yet not working for the church was not okay? Excuse me, working for the church was not okay. And it wasn't just that. It was like tobacco. You know, we were told not to own tobacco or firearm stock. We couldn't make money on the sales of drugs or firearms. We were not allowed to sell comic books that cost money because you're facilitating the spread of demonism. And this really upset me because why is this so? If you really think about it, if you really want to get down and deep into it, so if everything is controlled by Satan, you know, all the political parties in every country, all the religions are controlled by Satan, why does it matter where you work at? Does it matter if you're delivering the mail? Aren't you still working for Satan? Isn't that part of Satan's system of things? If you work for the government, aren't you still part of Satan's system of things? So why does it matter if, you know, if it's what kind of employment you have or how you make money? Why is it okay for Watchtower to benefit financially from the sale of a Kingdom Hall, but we can't benefit financially from a sale of something that's bad? Now, again, am I making too big of a point about this? I might be. But we've had articles in the Watchtower about like different churches that were pagan centers of worship, like St. Peter's Basilica in Rome was a pagan temple, and how Watchtower said, even though they might rededicate it, it's still unclean. You can't use it for pure worship. We were also told, but that it was okay for us to buy an old abandoned building, remodel it, make it into a Kingdom Hall. That was okay. But it wasn't okay for Babylon the Great to do the same thing. Do you see it's just a hypocritical stance if you think about it. My other problem I have is in 1997 when Ephrata and Honeybrook sold their 2 halls and built a new hall in New Holland, the local Friends got that money. That money went back to local Friends to build a new hall in New Holland. The Tremont Congregation Hall was built in 1972, like 15 years before I moved there. They only had 30 publishers when they built that humongous Kingdom Hall. We moved there in 87. I was 10 years old. They had 100 publishers. I heard in 2019, when they dissolved the congregation, it only had about 95 publishers, so it hasn't grown. That's another reason why they dissolved the Kingdom Hall, because they're not growing, they're shrinking. So Pottsville, where my wife went for 10 years, they had roughly about 100 publishers. Now they're all meeting together. Pottsville was a quick build. It was built in 91. So now when they sold Tremont, did the local Friends get that money? No, it went to headquarters. It made the fat cats in Warwick fatter. That is another problem I have with this, because the local Friends who took time off work, took time off their vacation to build this building, they did not get the benefit from it. And that is unfair to those witnesses. Do I hate Watchtower? 100% without all my heart. But I do not hate the witnesses because they do not have their own brains. They are controlled by Watchtower. And if you think about it, the Tremont Hall was built, before the RBC. We remodeled it without the RBC. We remodeled it in 91. There was no RBC involved. We did it ourselves when I was like 14. So not one penny of headquarters money went into that building, yet they get all that money back from them. So again, this is a different video than normally. I know I'm ranting and raving about this, but just think about that. And then ask your Jehovah's Witness friends, if they're still talking to you, why is it okay to sell to a church? Aren't you facilitating false worship? How many times were we told from articles and magazines and Circuit of Seers that, for instance, that our Kingdom Halls are the center for pure worship. We have to donate money to them. We have to keep them clean. We have to maintain them properly because it brings shame and reproach upon Jehovah. We have to make them as beautiful as possible. But now, that Kingdom Hall is a church. It's no longer a center of pure worship. So all that effort, all that time is for naught, for no reason. And how can witnesses, if they ever go back door to door, how can they say they're the true religion when you can't even point to a hall anymore? It's not even there. One more point, and then I'll wrap up. So my wife and I did unassigned territory for 6 years. We went to Virginia, Kentucky, and West Virginia. Our last 3 years, 2013, 14, and 15, we went to upstate New York on the Canadian border. And we went there. There were 2 little small congregations, about 25 publishers each. And there was another hall that they had sold before we got there. We go back in 2014. There's only 1 hall. 2015, right before we woke up, there was no halls. They'd sold all 3 of those little tiny halls, and they made the Friends go to Canada, across the river into Canada, across international borders to go to the meeting twice a week. Is that loving or kind? No. The funny thing is, to wrap this video up on a funny point, the Hall and Governor in New York, whoever bought it turned into a bar, and they took the Kingdom part down, they kept the Hall there, and they changed it to Happy Hall. So they turned the Kingdom Hall into a Happy Hall for a bar, and I think it was for the first time in anybody's life, people actually had a happy time in that building. So thank you for watching. Sorry for me to rambling on for minutes on end, but just give a thought about that. How can anybody justify the sale of halls to false worship if you truly believe in your heart this is all pagan drawn? Thank you for watching. Have a great day. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.